Good evening, and welcome to our continuing series, Explorations in Savitri. We are in Book 2, the Book of the Traveler of the Worlds, Canto 8, The World of Falsehood. And, as always, we're joined by So we are at page 225 at the break.
And we just read about the dangers that encounter in sadhak, an aspirant on this journey. So very often people have an idea of yoga as a very cushy life, as a very comfortable life. They don't realize what battles one has to fight within. Outwardly, it may not be visible. I remember once Arjav, James
yes.
Chadwick.
Yes.
He was a British and what a
yes.
lovely poet. And someone came and asked him, what are you really doing in the ashram? But the idea was, nothing, just enjoying life, nothing much to do outwardly. And he said, what we are doing is far more difficult than what you can understand.
Yeah.
So what is it you are doing? He said, what if I said I am fighting with my ego? Will you understand it? I am reminded of a famous saying of Bulle Shah where he says, you are fighting with the whole world, but you have not fought with your own nafs. Nafs is the ego. And that reminds me also a very nice couplet, Urdu couplet, where he says, of course we have to understand it's not about masjid and heaven obviously, but he says, I prefer to sit in your sanctuary rather than in the heavens, because in the heaven my ego is satisfied and flattered, but in your sanctuary it is you who are satisfied and happy. I forget it. So, it's not easy to keep the ego and live near the divine, and I think that's the big challenge. And these forces are there to pick up the smallest of these movements, and they hit hard. They hit from everywhere. And Mother says, those near me, those who love me, they are the ones who are attacked. And to what levels it can go. So the need for vigilance. One of the things that saves, which Mother has said particularly with regard to these forces of darkness, she says humility.
And sincerity.
Sincerity. Sincerity, of course, is tremendous. But sincerity is not so easy for human beings, at least an integral sincerity. But humility is easy. Relatively easy. In humility, she says, before the divine. How much ever experiences we may have, we must always know that we are nothing before that infinity. That saves.
There is a shrub on the Oroville Road, and there are not many left. And it gets covered up with the red soil from the road, from the traffic. But it has a beautiful smell. And even when it's not in bloom, I have to go to it, because Mother named it Humility Before the Divine in the Physical Nature.
Wow. So the road to new creation is paved with humility. Yes, sincerity, vigilance, they are all endurance, because these forces test you to the limits. So here they come, and they are allowed by the Spirit. They are not, it's not that divine tests us, but they are allowed because they ultimately bring out something which would not have come out but for their action. It's not the preferred or desired way of evolution, and Sri Aurobindo makes it very clearly. He says evolution should be through the sunlit path, joyous, beautiful, smiling, cheerful. But they are there because they bring out those parts in us which are still dark. For terrible agencies the Spirit allows. We can say that only the Spirit can allow, because it's omnipotent. Only Shiva can allow all the biggest Daityas and Asuras to come near, because he is mighty. And there are subtle and enormous powers that shield themselves with the covering ignorance. So they are very subtle in their action. They are not, it's easy to, she says it's very easy to safeguard yourself, to remain vigilant when there are big events. But very difficult when there are small little things. Somebody says something in a moment, unsuspecting moment, and it may trigger off a whole chain of reaction. So that's where they come very subtly. They can wear very nice masks, precious masks, even masks of, helping humanity, doing good, and all kinds of coverings they can wear. And so, they are subtle in their action. Offspring of the gulfs, agents of the shadowy force, haters of light, intolerant of peace. Aping to the thought the shining friend and guide, opposing in the heart the eternal will, they veil the occult, uplifting harmonist.
And
So,
just what you said,
yes.
Aping, the shining
Aping.
friend and guide.
And how they do it, Mother has beautifully explained this. Said the divine voice within, and there is a whole prayer about that. She says it's so modest. It's like a whisper, it's gentle. It will just give you a little indication and leave you free to follow it or not follow it. And that's what people experienced when they went to Mother. Uplifted, widened, set free to be themselves. And yet there was a gentle uplifting. But these forces will ape it and say, thou shalt not do this, otherwise thou shalt suffer in hell. This is typical of the devil. Typical of this darkness. It is like booming voice, as if this is how God gives a command. God doesn't give a command like that. He is so gentle, so sweet. Look at the line, occult, uplifting, harmonist. Because he does it in a beautiful way, in a harmonious way.
Yes.
Violent methods are not her way. His wisdom's oracles are made our bonds. That is how all great truths become dogma. So Mother says that what I have said, don't turn it into a rigid dogma. And people have a tendency, even when she wrote cling to truth. So people turned it into a dogma. And then she says, everybody is asking me, my truth versus his truth. And she says, what can I do? I only wrote cling to truth, and then he laughs. She says they make it into a rigid dogma. And then there is a whole conversation on that. And then she says everybody has his own fad which he believes to be truth. And it becomes a very convenient truth for his opinions. Mother has said that. And it went on to that, children, they must sleep at 9 o'clock. Mother has said so. So in a name, people were frightening everyone. And then she had to say, and at the end they will come and tell me, Mother, see, Sri Aurobindo has said, truth and falsehood cannot remain together in the same place. And then she would laugh. She is so vast and sweet and infinite, limitless, grace, abundance. So anything that she has said, oracles, wisdom's oracles, are turned into bonds. And how it is turned into bonds, we'll see a few lines below. The doors of God they have locked with keys of creed. Dogmas. That's how. Keys of creed. And shut out by the law his tireless grace. How beautifully she says, if you believe that God will uplift you every moment, He will uplift you every moment. 1,000 times He will come and uplift you, because it's a tireless grace. It doesn't judge us. Some of her writings says the Divine Mother never condemns, never judges. If she were to do it, we'll collapse. There is a letter somebody writes to Sri Aurobindo, why have you kept this person still in the ashram? And Sri Aurobindo says, we are not a judge deciding things in a court of justice. If we had to act like this, probably very few will remain, and that is also doubtful. Yes. And then he goes on to say something very beautiful. However much X may go wrong, still we have to encourage him, to lift him up and put him back on the trail of light. This is the grace. And she speaks about these censors, these adverse forces, which will always point out. First they will point out to the wrong in others. Then they will point out to the wrong within you and dishearten you. And what they forget, Mother says, originally they were instruments of sincerity, but they have fallen. So now they have become instruments of darkness. That means they put everybody into despair. But then she says, and what they forget and what really makes them adverse is that they forget grace. They forget grace. They don't know that, if It's not on human effort that things depend. They actually depend on grace. Effort is needed to help us open to the grace. Along all nature's lines, they have set their posts and intercept the caravans of light. Wherever the gods act, they intervene. Once someone asked Sri Aurobindo that why even in ashram we have all kinds of people. He said, oh, you don't know, it's an ancient knowledge. As old as the Vedas, that wherever a yagna is going on, there even the Rakshasas and Asur come. They are impelled by the will for power.
He also said, I don't think saints would like it here.
Yes. So it's because they all come and the divine accept that, okay, give everybody a chance. Why not? It's the whole creation.
Yes.
And so many, once somebody asked Mother, why have you kept this person? He is saying all kinds of nonsense about the ashram, about this, about that. Then she laughed and said, it is good. Only then sincere people will come. So he is serving as a filter. Those who have to come will come. Yeah. Like Amal Kiran. Yeah. So, but yes, there are others who will say, oh, is it like this? They don't have the inner sight to see and feel. So she says, it's okay. He's also doing a job. So, wherever the gods act, they intervene. So, they are always round the corner. All nature's posts. A yoke is laid upon the world's dim heart. Masked are its beats from the supernal bliss, and the closed peripheries of brilliant mind block the fine entries of celestial fire. Look at it. Closed peripheries of brilliant mind. A mind shut in its own brilliance. A high intellectual, but close to the light. Because he believes only in ifs and buts and either and or.
Nolini told me it was an ivory tower and one could not proceed further.
Yes, the mind, particularly a brilliant mind.
Yes, yes.
She has said that, the hearts, which is easy for the heart to open.
Yes.
Once even Sri Aurobindo remarked when he was asked that why people don't progress so fast here. So he said, of course the yoga is difficult here. Then at the same time he said one reason is that there is little bhakti, very little bhakti. And then he adds, after all, a modern ashram, I suppose. He is a modern guru. He accepted. Because all the intellectual difficulties of the race, people with all kinds of doubts, they had to come. Because that was the representation of the age.
And many felt that there was no bhakti in the ashram.
Yes,
he had to say.
That's true. He had to
say that bhakti is premier here.
Yes. Yes, people, even now, they make the yoga appear as a philosophy, a dry philosophy, which is purely in the intellectual mind, whereas Sri Aurobindo stresses on surrender, love is the crowning movement, true bhakti. Of course, this is not a yoga of bhakti alone,
no,
but it has such a central role to play. Surrender is the key word of this yoga.
Exactly.
Always the dark adventurers seem to win. Nature they fill with evils institutes. What are these evils institutes? Not happy things to read. Turn into defeats the victories of truth. Proclaim as falsehoods the eternal laws. And load the dice of doom with wizard lies. All these things about heaven and hell. Wizard lies. Whoever invented these stories and made a big money out of, from there started all these pandits who will take some money and, clear your path to heaven, who will propitiate for the bad deeds you have done and things. The whole thing is,
No different in the US.
Everywhere it has its own style, everywhere.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. If you go far back times, it is not there. But, it's a more rather recent invention. If we go into, like I have to often tell people that, look, don't say that this is Indian. This is much more recent. It's a distortion of something profound. Even things like fasting, And many institutions that came up. For instance, widow, somebody had to make widow remarried, but it was not like that in ancient times. The world's shrines they have occupied, usurped its thrones. And this is a very sad experience. I remember during internship going to Kali Ghat, because it's Sri Ramakrishna used to go there and pray. So I was very moved to go there, but it was a very sad experience to see, people, gundas literally, suddenly will stop you and give me money, I'll allow you to go. And in Kali Shrine, can you beat it? And we were, of course, 3 medical students, and we also got into Kali mood. We said, you just get away from here. But just imagine it's there. And it's a very powerful place when you actually come close. But they are there all around. Every shrine.
Mother had her experiences.
Yes, many experiences. You see, the first thing, one of the things which I liked about the ashram is that, you can just walk up to the shrine in a very unassuming way. Otherwise, you have to pay money, you have to do this, you have to do that. The priest will come and there are ritual pujas, this, that. Nothing. And it's so unassuming. You go there, just leave your chappals. That much is, though, she allowed some people to even carry the chappals when they had issues. So leave the chapel, just go there, and between you and the divine.
And wonderful. Everyone is permitted.
Everyone is permitted. So this idea of a priest intervening, that's where the falsehood starts. And then rules and regulations and one after another. So all the world shrines, we have to be so vigilant and so cautious. In scorn of the dwindling chances of the gods, they claim creation as their conquered fief estate, because they are the ones who first went into creation. So they say that we have a right. That's how the Asura rules, because he is the one who comes first and does the hard and dirty work. It's also true. So he has to furrow the soil. So all the hard work, you see, when matter had to be, life had to be awakened, it's asleep. So it won't respond to the touches of the gods. That's how one of the Upanishads describes that the Lord wanted to catch him by the spirit, he couldn't, then by the thought he couldn't, then by the life energy he couldn't. Then he goes in from the lower vital energy. When he catches matter, it gets caught. So it's a very symbolic thing that, it doesn't respond to anything higher. So ultimately something very dark, something very mischievous, that comes and shakes it, and then it begins to at least open up. So the Asuras came first in creation and dug it. But after that the gods come in. But they say it's our estate. And that's why the divine doesn't dislodge them by force. Because it's true that they have done a difficult task. They have furrowed the place, swallowed the poison. So they too have a stake. They are also stakeholders. But they must prepare themselves and be converted into the nature of the gods to get the cup of immortality.
And Mother says, they are my children.
They are my
also.
children. And that's why we have the legend of Amrit Manthan, where, both must come together to churn the ocean for the nectar of immortality. Both you need. But the last test is the crucial one, where at the end, after you have done everything and the nectar comes out, you are still given a final choice. That's how the story is. I am not going into detail. But the last test is Vishnu assumes the form of Jagan Mohini. All that the world can give you, all the pleasure, riches, everything, embodied in the form of a feminine energy. And she goes around. The Asuras are now drawn only to all that the world can give. And the gods are eyeing on the nectar of immortality. Therefore, they deserve the prize. And Sri Aurobindo says this, that therefore the verdict of Vishnu stands. Asura must convert himself, then he becomes an adhikari for the. So, and Savitri says that all is too little that the world can give. Yes. At some point one has to understand it. They claim creation as their conquered fief and crown themselves the iron lords of time. They are the great dictators, adepts of the illusion and the mask. The artificers of nature's fall and pain have built their altars of triumphant night in the clay temple of terrestrial life.
Yes.
And all kinds of illusions they can create. Even the illusion of divinity, one of their last and the worst kind of illusion. And they can act in the mind. Once somebody asked Sri Aurobindo about, yes, mother is there, but reality is that mother. And, this mother is fine, but she is just a symbol, something like that. And Sri Aurobindo says, beware of an hostile Asuric Maya, brilliant Asuric Maya, that creates a division between this mother and that mother. How they can intervene, very subtle and looks very rational. Yes, ultimately the world mother, it's nothing new. But this mother, incarnate mother, the individual mother who holds within her the two of her own vaster ways of existence, she is the one who is the bridge. The world mother is the universal mother. She has been playing with creation since, eternity, and anybody can approach her. But for transformation, the incarnate divine. So, how illusion can come in.
Yes.
There was another one who had gone all the way when there was separation, this India-Pakistan. He went to Pakistan. And he said, no, I have finished whatever integral yoga was there. Now I have to go further. So, illusion, all kinds of illusions they can create in the mind and in the heart. In the vacant precincts of the sacred fire, in front of the reredos in the mystic rite. So these are, if I am not mistaken, in where the mystic rite is being performed, they are the backdrop. Nice, lovely backdrops.
Prohibited to the masses.
Prohibited to the mass. So you can't see, what is behind.
No.
What is hidden behind? The velamen. So velamen also comes here.
Yes.
Facing the dim velamen none can pierce. Intones his solemn hymn the mitred priest, invoking their dreadful presence in his breast, attributing to them the awful name. He chants these syllables of the magic text and summons the unseen communion's act. While twixt the incense and the muttered prayer, all the fierce bale with which the world is racked is mixed in the foaming chalice of man's heart and poured to them like sacramental wine. Wow. So though there is prayer, though there is the ritual, though there is the worship, but the heart is full of filth, full of hatred, jealousies, invoking. I know someone who was invoking Kali to fall upon somebody else and ended up having a very serious problem. And then when I came to know about it, I said, obviously it is very dangerous, because if Kali comes, first she will come to the person who has invoked. And what is her action? To destroy whatever is false. Who can be pure enough to, call Kali? Ramakrishna could do it. But otherwise, everybody else will be broken by her and cast aside. So whenever I read these things, often I see, Kali, and, even recently something was going on WhatsApp, and, Sri Aurobindo has written in a different sense. Kali's love is as great as a wrath. Yes, it's very profound, but, we should ask for compassion and love and grace. What we can stand before, if, she were to manifest. Or we should be ready that first we should say, Mother, take my ego as a sacrifice. So I told this person, if you want to come out with this problem, offer yourself now as the sacrificial object. I said, you live in this consciousness that you are the sacrifice at the altar of Kali. Then leave it to her. She may save you or you may be finished. He survived a most dangerous illness, malignancy. Doctor said written off. They gave him a couple of months. He survived. It's a true story which, 2 years back I have seen, witnessed. It just came spontaneously. I said, you have invoked Kali to harm somebody, but now what you do is you offer yourself as the sacrifice. Then it's up to her. She may save you or she may break you. You can't tell Kali what she should do. She listens to nobody, not even the gods. That's why Sri Aurobindo says, liberate us from these gods, O Kali. None can tame her force. Once he decides to intervene, she decides. So these priests often, there are people who do harm. Sri Aurobindo, that fakir who said, I'll get stones thrown.
Yes, yes.
There are all kinds of these beings in this world, forces.
But tell the rest of the story about the fakir, because
We know
it's
he
so
couldn't-
beautiful.
Of course, somebody who is surrendered to divine, nothing can harm.
Yeah.
And Sri Aurobindo is Sri Aurobindo. He said, I can't throw it within 25 meters or something, or feet or some area. But I need, even for the rest, I need somebody who can be like a medium.
Yeah.
So they planted a young cook who had come in place of somebody else, Vatal.
Yes, yes.
And through him, he was a medium, planted. So through him, wherever he went, the stone started materializing. And it became a big thing, and finally the magic fell back, to cut the long story short. And this man fell mortally ill
Mortally ill,
on the deathbed. Then his wife came running to Mother, Amma, pleading, he is dying. So mother went to the Lord. He is dying. So Sri Aurobindo says, what? Dying for a few stones?
he need not die.
Nothing, that's enough. He recovered. Dying for a few stones. See, Lord's compassion. But these are the people who do this. So some of these asuras, they are very religious. Sri Aurobindo says that. They religiously will visit the temple. They will catch both their ears with both the hands. Twice, thrice they will sit up and down. You can spot them. Every day, morning to evening, we will commit all that we should not in our heart and thought. Then we will go and do twice, thrice. It is not invoking grace. It is just fooling God. So, and religiously they will go. Assuming names divine, they guide and rule. So this is the other part, that the shrines, etc. Opponents of the highest, they have come out of their world of soulless thought and power to serve by enmity the cosmic scheme. Yet they serve.
To serve, yes.
They serve. They ultimately, you have to go through the net. If you are not ready, you will get caught in it. But if you pass through, okay, you are ready. You have passed through certain layers of challenges. So they serve by enmity. They prepare the soul, make it appear strong, sincere. Ultimately, are you ready? That's why they come and test. So they serve by enmity the cosmic scheme. Night is their refuge and strategic base against the sword of flame, the luminous eye. Bastion, they live in massive forts of gloom. One can feel it in their places. Forts of gloom. Calm and secure in sunless privacy. Look at it, the word calm. Yeah. Something which belongs to the higher realm. They are calm. Why? Because they are in their comfort cocoon. Calm and secure in sunless privacy. No wandering ray of heaven can enter there. Armored, protected by the lethal masks, as in a studio of creative death, the giant sons of darkness sit and plan the drama of the earth, their tragic stage. So they sit in these forts of gloom, bastions, forts where they plan tragedies on earth, terrorizing people and destroying lives. This their pastimes. And now comes the lines we must remember.
Next lines, yes.
All who would raise the fallen world must come under the dangerous arches of their power. For even the radiant children of the gods to darken their privileges and dreadful right. This is something that I never keep tiring of saying. People, particularly, they look at the ashram or sadhaks and they draw very quick conclusions. So I tell them that, when you lead this life, you understand what are the forces that can awaken and attack you. As long as you belong to the dark sphere, they don't care. You are leading a worldly life with your own little good and your little bad. But when you take to this great challenge of fighting your own ego, of uprooting desire from its bleeding roots, it's then they will spring up again and again and again like Rakt Beej. And ultimately it is only the Lord's grace which can uproot them. And you have to go on persevering, endure and persevere with faith and faith. Because this is the journey. That is how they attack. Because that's how they make us ready for the fullness of the divine. Otherwise, we'll be very happy within our little list of good and bad. That's normal life. So,
and the last line.
For even the radiant children of the gods to darken their privileges and dreadful right. And it's there in our scriptures. We see the Pandavas, they suffered so much. Rama suffered so much. Ravana, what is there? He died at the end. Died like a king. Duryodhana died like a prince. But they had to suffer one mistake of Yudhishthir and 13 years banishment. Because if you have to choose to be an instrument of the divine, then it has to be perfection. And often this analogy used to come to my mind. People often come saying, I want to be an instrument of the divine. Says, oh, sure? Yes. Sure? Yes. Sure, 100% yes. So pick up the raw material. She puts it into the furnace. I say, oh my God, it's burning, but you asked for it. The iron must melt and prepare itself to become steel. How can you purify without this? If you want a comfortable life, then be an instrument of all these forces which are always ready to engulf. And yes, the last line, none can reach heaven who has not passed through hell. Of course, those who have gone through, they will not speak about it. It is so painful. So, because they eventually emerge out, they see the hand of grace, they see the wonder worker. And then they thank the grace that, all this happened in my life. But you have to go through it. It's the price, the tax of the night. The price for the great discovery. The price of pearls. He says, no price is enough. At the end also, when death is transformed in Savitri, at the end, when in place of death there is this Hiranyagarbha, the great being who was hidden behind the cape of death. What does Sri Aurobindo say so beautifully? He says, all suffering was but an easy prize. Then you say, this was nothing if this is there. But during that phase, you only think of, so much pain, so much struggle. There are people who have gone away thinking life was very easy outside. Unfortunately, then they are neither here nor there. Once you enter, let it be a one-way process. Mother used to say, think 10 times before you enter this life.
Yes.
It's a great adventure. Once you enter, then go through it. Be prepared to go through everything because, it is demanding, it is exacting, it is thoroughgoing. Absolutely. And who does all this process? These fellows. None can reach heaven who has not passed through hell. But we should remember always that with our hands of love holding us, then even hell is heaven. Stop here.